So I think we'll jump right into it. Welcome everyone. Once again, my name is Alain Lefebvre and I'm the manager of workforce programs for the Construction Association of Nova Scotia. Welcome to all of those attending virtually to what is, I believe, number 6 in a session of construction career Q&As. We're very pleased to have Josh Surette joining us today from Heritage Gas Limited. And I'll give you a little bit info in a few moments as to kind of what Josh does and where he's coming from. But first, I want to say a few words of thank you as far as thanking all of our program partners who have been supporting us in this initiative, and a big thank you as well to everyone who has been attending the sessions, both live virtually and those who have been watching the sessions, session recordings on demand. Again, I want to just quickly reinforce kind of the purpose of these sessions, which is to allow students, teachers, anyone really who's interested to explore careers in construction from the safety of their own homes or offices during this interesting time that we're currently living through. In addition to that, I think it's great, and I think it's really important that these sessions also allow us to get some information, to ask questions, and to hear directly from those people who actually work in these occupations who we're profiling. So again, we're really pleased to be able to do this. Some quick housekeeping. The format, once again, of these sessions is question and answer. We have prepared a number of questions for our guests. I also encourage anyone watching the sessions virtually to submit any questions that you may have using the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen. I'll be monitoring that as closely as possible, and I'll be sure not to miss any of the questions that you may have. I will let everyone know as well that these sessions are also being recorded and are made available for on-demand viewing at both our website, which is www.buildingfeatures.ca, as well as the Nova Scotia Department of Education and Early Childhood Development YouTube page. All of the sessions are available to be seen and kind of watch on demand at any point in time. Lastly, I've been given this disclaimer every time. Though we have been really fortunate, we haven't run into any IT hiccups. I would still say it's only a matter of time till one does come up. I certainly hope it's not this session, but if it does, please bear with us. We'll do everything we can to get back online as quickly as possible, and hopefully not lose any of our time. So again, each one of these sessions are focusing on a local industry professional as well as a specific occupation. And today's guest, once again, I'm really pleased to introduce Josh Surette. Josh is a supervisor as well as a certified power engineer with Heritage Gas. So we're going to be talking to Josh and learning a little bit about his career progression, but we're also going to be learning about the power engineer trade and kind of what goes into that. So to start off first, I just want to thank you very much for making the time for us this afternoon, Josh.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you very much for having me.
Oh, excellent. So the first question that I like to ask Josh is instead of me trying to choke through or stumble through what I believe a power engineer to be, perhaps you could tell anyone watching what is a power engineer? What does a power engineer do?
Yeah, sure. The power engineer is really a wide covering trade. You can look after a wide range of things, and it's, a power engineer will operate a large boiler room at a place like at a hospital or a power plant, but you can operate a wide range of equipment from compressors for compressed air. Myself, I look after compressed natural gas. Find power engineers in all sorts of different industries like forestry or like fish plants and stuff like that. So typically we're operating and maintaining machinery of a certain size that has some potential for some danger if something goes wrong. And like I say, it's a very vast trade that covers a lot of different areas. So it's hard to get it's hard to be well-rounded in all areas of the.
Excellent. So you work, Josh, for Heritage Gas Limited. Would you mind telling us a little bit about the type of work? And again, I know it is certainly wide ranging, but the type of work that Heritage Gas does, and maybe just a little bit about Heritage Gas Limited.
Yeah, absolutely. So Heritage Gas is the natural gas utility for the province of Nova Scotia. We have a natural gas franchise primarily in the Halifax area. And we also have a franchise in the Amherst area as well as the Pictou area. That's where we're supplying natural gas. And we also do what's called compressed natural gas, which is my side of the company, where we actually truck natural gas to some large users that aren't on the traditional natural gas pipeline system.
Okay, very cool. Can you tell us a little bit, Josh, about, and again, you know, there's students, there's teachers who are going to get the opportunity to watch this, and they're working towards figuring out what their future career path is. Can you maybe tell us just a little bit about your career path, how you became a power engineer?
Sure. I kind of came about it in a roundabout way. I'm a fourth class power engineer, which as classes go, that's the lowest class of power engineering. So it goes in reverse. So 4, 3, 2, 1 is the highest level. For myself, I achieved that fourth class, and with my career, I didn't have the need to go any further than that. And where I work, that's as far as I can go due to the equipment ratings, et cetera.
Okay.
But myself, I took a 2-year heating and ventilation air conditioning program with Nova Scotia Community College in 2000 after high school.
Okay.
From there, I became an air conditioning and refrigeration mechanic. From there, I started doing a lot of work on equipment that packaged both air conditioning and heating in one unit for natural gas primarily. So I started working towards my natural gas license at that time. Once I finished my natural gas license, I started doing a lot of work on larger boilers, and I spent a lot of time in one place in particular. And the company I worked for at the time had a power engineer on staff at this one facility where I spent a lot of time. I converted the facility from oil over to natural gas, and I did a lot of work on boilers. I was able to get my hours in there and apprentice. I did the power engineering program. I actually did through NSCC online learning.
Okay.
Got my hours in, and then I wrote the exams, and I was able to get my fourth class power engineer ticket.
Interesting.
It's it wasn't my initial goal. I kind of came to it in a roundabout way, but it's been a trade that I've really enjoyed.
Okay. What is it, I guess, about the trade that really drew you to it?
You see a wide variety of technical equipment. I mean, what I do, I'm very specialized more on the natural gas side of the industry. I enjoy working with that type of equipment personally, fixing it, figuring out how it works. And I think with power engineering, particularly, there's a lot of job security, which drew me to that as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, there's definitely something to be said for that.
Yeah.
Excellent. Did you something I always like to ask of the tradespeople that we interview, did you have an idea, thinking back to when you were in high school, junior high, maybe even later, that you wanted to work in this industry and you wanted to do that type of work, or even, the industry in general?
Not really, no. I didn't really know what I wanted to do coming out of high school. I knew I didn't want to go to university. I grew up in Yarmouth, and my options were more or less go fishing or not much else really. So I made a decision to move out, and went to trade school. I knew I wanted to go in a certain direction. It was actually a career fair in grade 12 at our high school, and somebody recommended the course that I took. And even still, when I signed up for that course, I didn't know which direction I wanted to go with it. I just knew I liked to work with hands. I like to take things apart, and it was a good angle for me. So I followed that, and it's been a good choice.
Oh, good. I got a question coming in, Josh, on the Q&A, and it's a great question. The question is, it's interesting that you mentioned taking online course through NSCC. With kind of today's distancing measures and colleges needing to change some in-person training, how did you feel that the distance learning helped you prepare?
My preference, honestly, between in-class or online learning would be in-class. Online learning is great. You can learn at your own pace in a lot of situations, and that's a really great perk to it in a lot of situations. So you can, come home at night and, spend 3, 4, 5 hours in the lessons.
Yeah.
But the one thing I really like about the in-class learning is you have somebody there who's going to tell you where the key things are. I think that was the one thing I struggled with the most, was you don't know what so much the important things are and aren't as you're reading it.
Yeah.
But it is a really good option, especially for somebody who's, working and trying to do things on the side. And I mean, you will, once you get into your work experience, a lot of those things all start to make sense.
Yeah. Interesting. Josh, you talked a little bit about kind of the first program and the first trade that you pursued. Can you tell me a little bit more about your very first job in the industry?
Yeah, I got into sheet metal. So I was making ductwork and doing installations of air conditioning and ventilation equipment, but primarily just in the ductwork side and sheet metal fabrication. And it was good. I learned a lot of different things. I knew early on in that career that wasn't where I wanted to stay for different reasons. I wanted to get more sheet metal I wanted to get more technical, I guess, with the different electrical sides of things as well.
Okay.
And sheet metal is good. I learned a lot from it. Cut myself a lot because gloves weren't real popular back then, but a lot now. I spent about a year doing that, and then I kind of decided I was ready to move on. That wasn't really where I wanted to make a career. And luckily, I was able to find another position with the company and got into commercial refrigeration from there.
Okay, interesting. Follow-up question to the question that came in through the Q&A. Was having, kind of again, contrasting the distance learning versus kind of the hands-on side of things, was having a mentor to guide you, how valuable was that as far as a part of your learning?
Honestly, for myself, it wasn't. It's definitely good to have somebody there you can lean on and ask those tough questions. For myself, I shouldn't say no, it wasn't. It was for certain aspects for sure. Again, when it comes back to it, you're not sure what things are important and what's not. It's good to have somebody to ask a question to.
Yeah.
I mean, through the online learning, there is an instructor for the course that you can reach out to.
Okay.
It's typically emails or phone calls. It's nice to have that live connection with somebody that you know personally or work alongside. You can have a little more frank conversation, I guess, around things. Yeah.
Interesting.
You can do it without a mentor, but it definitely helps if you have one.
Yeah, absolutely. Have you, on the flip side, now that you've been, working in the industry for a little while, have you had an opportunity to kind of act as a mentor to younger or newer people coming in?
Yeah, somewhat. I mean, the guys I have 4 guys that work for me, and when they came to the industry, it was all, again, because we're in a bit of a niche industry within the industry, as far as natural gas and the compressor plant, it was all new to everybody. So
okay.
For the 4 operators I have that work for me, yeah, it's been a lot of time, mentoring and kind of training and teaching. We've had a few students come through along the way, kind of point them in the right direction, kind of tell them, kind of what things worked for me, what things, kind of try and point them into what to look at and what to read and et cetera.
Interesting. Thinking about kind of your experience and what you do right now, what would you say is the toughest part of your trade?
Excuse me. With what I do right now, it's once you reach a supervisor role, it's the scheduling and the people more so than anything. We run a plant that has to be staffed 24/7.
Okay.
One person on site 24/7, and that's a regulated requirement. So it gets tricky if somebody calls in sick. You've got to figure it out. So there's been lots of times where I drop everything I'm doing and I go to work because it has to be done.
Right.
And probably the trickiest, most challenging part now. I mean, earlier in my career, it was definitely just the technology and getting your head around what's out there and how to handle it and where to find the information you need.
Yeah. Interesting. I mean, thinking about kind of the natural gas side of things, and and I think in relative terms, that's still relatively, it's relatively new to a lot of people. Where do you see kind of the industry heading as far as it pertains to the natural gas?
Well, that's a tricky question. It's there's lots of talk right now about fossil fuels and carbon and everything else. So I mean, Heritage Gas obviously quite involved with those conversations with with the government and how that infrastructure will come together. It seems to be here to stay. I mean, hydrogen seems to be the next kind of thing that people are talking about that may replace it, but it's probably a little too far out to say yet that's where it's going to go.
Yeah.
but now, I mean, and you're right, it is newer to the area. It's been around for quite a long time, but for Nova Scotia, it's only been here since the early 2000s.
Yeah.
So a lot of people are still, a little shy around it and uncomfortable with it. And again, it's only in select areas in Nova Scotia. And it is, honestly, it's still growing within the province itself. So as the industry as a whole is changing, we will change with it.
Yeah. Well, very cool. I got another question coming in on the Q&A. That question is, you mentioned trying sheet metal, HVAC, and then moving on to something a little bit more niche, power engineering.
Yep.
How was having kind of those different trade experience, how did that help you in being a power engineer?
It was huge. It really, really helped me to excel at the job I'm in. I use the skills I learned from both of those trades all the time. Every day. They're just as useful in my job today as the power engineer training. And truthfully, it's funny. I thought when I started the power engineer training, having those other two trades under my belt, I thought I was just going to walk through the first level and it was going to be no problem. And it actually surprised me how hard it was and what I actually needed to learn. And even the exams at the end, I was quite surprised by how hard it was walking through to get it on the other end. But in my day-to-day working job, those other trades have been huge in helping me succeed.
Very cool. So I asked you, and you told us a little bit about, what the toughest part of your job was. What do you think? What's your favorite part of your job?
Again, back to the technical side of it, I like to figure out why things break, and then I like to fix them. That's what I enjoy the most.
Okay. Does that help you out at all in your day-to-day life when you're away from work?
Oh yeah, I'll tear apart things at home and put them back together.
Yeah. I'll tear them apart. I just won't get them back together.
That's the trick. Yeah.
I've got another great question coming in on the Q&A. And the question is, did you have to go back to school for new certifications in HVAC and power engineering, or did your employers train you?
A combination. So
Okay.
with all three, there's a school component and on-the-job training component. In order, you have to have a certain amount of hours for each level. Now, the one thing that sets power engineering apart is when you have each level actually sets out in the regulations what type of equipment or how large the equipment is that you can work on as a power engineer. Whereas the other trades, you go through your training and there's different blocks or different levels every 2,000 hours or so, and then you're not really officially licensed until the end of 8,000 hours. Whereas with power engineering, with each one of those four levels, you can legally do certain things. But yeah, with each level, there's a certain amount of schooling and a certain amount of hours on the job that you have to have.
Interesting. I'm curious, Josh, now that you're in, more of a supervisor position, how do you feel that the experience that you had as a tradesperson prepared you for a role in kind of supervision or management?
On the technical side, 100%, again, it did, but from a person side or the kind of the management side, I guess it didn't. It's tricky. Once you're at the supervisor level, there's a whole lot of different things you have to take on. Again, scheduling and just dealing with people and just making sure the job sites or the jobs flow and the planning. A lot of different stuff falls to you that may not have necessarily been part of your training. You may have had somebody hand you all the parts you needed to go do a job and say go do it. And now now I'm the guy finding all those parts and handing them over.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah, it's an interesting kind of dynamic that you'll often see in our industry is people will come from a trade background into a management or a supervision kind of role, and there really is there's a much different skill set that certainly comes with that. Did you find that to be a difficult transition?
Yes, I did. Yes, at times. I mean, I've adapted to it now, but initially it's a definite transition. It's not as smooth flowing as you think. I know a lot of guys come through, a lot of guys I worked alongside, everyone wants to be the boss.
Yeah.
And once you get up at that next level, you're like, okay, maybe it's not as much fun as you thought.
Yeah, that's right. Interesting. I got another question coming in, Josh, on the Q&A, and I'm getting some great questions. This one is, that interest to figure out how things work and fix things is pretty common with young people, and I would absolutely agree with that statement. But choosing a trade, however, can be more difficult. Wanting to be a mechanic is probably a more common choice than power engineers. Any advice for a young person about kind of what makes your trade unique?
Uh, Again, it's very vast. So you really become a jack of all trades in a lot of aspects. There's certain things you work on. I mean, some people, they look after buildings, so they get in charge of, lighting, and you do a little bit of carpentry and a little bit of plumbing, depending on where you land in the trade. And
Yeah.
it's a really good, well-rounded trade in that respect. Coming out of high school, I hadn't even heard of it. I pretty much saw trades as you're a carpenter, you're a plumber, you're an electrician.
Yeah.
And I didn't know it was an option, and it's a really good option because it is a well-rounded career, and you really get a little piece of a lot of things, and there's a lot of potential in the trade.
Yeah. Now that you're in the trade and you've been in it for a few years now, looking back at, your experience, like you say, in high school, not knowing that the trade even really existed, do you find that there's a little bit more awareness of the occupation now, or is it still something that's, I won't say hidden, but is a little bit less known?
It is definitely a little bit less known. It's definitely more prevalent now because of programs much like yours and what you guys do. It's starting to turn up a little more, but it's been an industry as well where the numbers have been declining over the years, and like a lot of trades, and it's a trade that needs more people, basically.
Yeah, interesting. Well, we'll take that. Absolutely. Something I like to ask of all of our guests as well, Josh, is, we go out and we talk to students all around the province, and we promote the benefits of a career in the trades and a career in construction. And one of the things that we like to highlight for students, is kind of the benefit package that comes with working in the trades, specifically wages and salaries. And without asking you to put a number on it by any means, how would the salary of a power engineer compare to that of, other common careers? So for example, teachers, police officers, again, common occupations.
Yeah, no, again, it depends on which level you go with. Yes, they are absolutely comparable, but that would be more on the higher levels as you go along. So at the entry level positions, not so much. You can still make a good living, still have a great career.
Yeah.
But as you progress through and get into the higher levels, absolutely, they're very comparable.
Yeah. Interesting. We talked a little bit about, or I asked you about kind of the future, a little bit of natural gas in our province, but as far as kind of the trade itself goes, have you experienced any kind of changes in the time that you started to where you are now?
Technology and automation most has been a huge, I've watched that kind of improve. Electronics and computers are taking over everything and taking over the human error element out of things. You can't engineer everything out. There's certain things that people just have to do. There's definitely been a lot of automation, and it's a lot more prominent.
Yeah, interesting. I got another question coming in, Josh, on the Q&A. And the question is, if it's a trade that needs more people, what kind of entry-level opportunities are there for a young person to get involved and start working towards that career? And then they further clarify with trades like carpentry, are a little bit more common as far as bringing on laborers and trades helpers. Are there similar opportunities that are connected to the power engineering trade?
There are. That's something I can't comment to a whole lot because I came to it from a different direction. But the school definitely has a lot of companies that it does work with for job placements and for work and stuff like that for the students coming out of school. So coming out of school this year, unfortunately, has been a little bit different because of everything that's going on with COVID. Typically, they do have a lot of companies that they work with to support the students in finding the skills and hopefully employment.
Yeah. How would you suggest, or what would you recommend to a young person, say there's a grade 12 student out there watching this who thinks, I'd like to learn a little bit more about, what a power engineer does other than watching this video and doing a little bit of research online. What kind of avenues would you suggest that a student pursue?
Certainly look at what the schools have to offer. So NSCC is the local institution that's going to do the training locally. There's a few different schools through NSCC that offer it. One at Akerley campus. It's also offered at Marconi and Straight campus as well.
Yeah.
I'd suggest looking into the programs and reading the programs in what they offer. Maybe reaching out and seeing if you can talk to an instructor. Another group that I'm a part of is called the Institute of Power Engineers.
Okay.
And we have a website. It's NIPE.ca, National Institute of Power Engineers. So NIPE.ca. You can check our website. We're a volunteer society, basically, that just tries to advocate for power engineering trade across the country. We have a Nova Scotia branch as well.
Interesting.
We have some information there. You can kind of check it out and see what it's all about. And then, of course, there's YouTube videos for everything.
That's right. Yeah, we're adding to it. I got another question coming in on the Q&A. I got two more questions. Excellent, coming in on the Q&A. This is a great one, especially for students that may be watching and may be interested. What courses in high school were most beneficial to you as you broke into the industry?
A tricky one. High school was a long way back. Math for sure. You don't necessarily have to have the calculus, but a good basis in math, and physics is definitely helpful. I'd say math and physics, a little bit of chemistry. You don't have to be you don't have to be the best in the class, but get a good basic understanding of it. There's courses, looking back, I wish I would have stuck with in high school, just to have a better grip on again the chemistry and the math and the physics of it all.
Interesting. It's
you don't need to be at the top of the class. Just it's good to have those in the back pocket.
That's right. I got another question coming in. I'm getting some great questions on the Q&A. This question is, power engineering is a trade that's regulated by license. Is there a way or a pathway that is more direct entry, or is a training course required?
Training course is required, as well as hours in apprenticeship. It's there's no direct way, unfortunately.
No direct entry.
The easiest way is to go through you can go through a 1 or a 2 year program with community college. That's the easiest way by far, and that gives you really good experience. And again, they kind of give you some direction with some work terms to kind of help you get the experience in the work.
Yeah.
That's by far the best way to do it.
Yeah. So Josh, you've come up now kind of through the process, through the system, and you're in a supervision, a management role. When you see, new young people coming into the industry now, what skills and what qualities do you really look for? Do you think will set a young person up to be most successful?
Somebody who's just eager to learn and to do the job, to take it all on, and somebody who just doesn't matter what it is, just, yep, I'll do that. It's as much of an attitude thing as it is a skill set, I think. The willingness to learn and the willingness to do different things and to take on things that may not necessarily be considered as, the job. You got to step outside the role sometimes and do things.
Yeah.
Interesting.
It's a pretty common piece of advice that we frequently get is, you can teach the trade to the young person or to the new person. But if you don't have the attitude, you don't have the soft skills, you don't have that stuff, then that stuff's a little bit harder to teach.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I agree.
So Josh, I asked a little bit about, how the trade has changed and how the industry might have changed a little bit over the years. One way where I certainly think the industry has changed over the years, but I think still there's work that needs to be done, is in and around diversity. So I would ask you if there was, a young lady at home watching this interview and she thought that she might be interested in exploring a career in power engineering, what would you say to her?
Do it. There's really nothing to stop you. If it's an interest, by all means, look into it. There's nothing to stop you. And the diversity in the workplace is actually something that's been a big focus over the last couple of years. Again, with the Institute of Power Engineers, we hold a conference every once a year, and the last couple of years, that's been one of the hot topics. But definitely, there's nothing to hold anyone back from getting in.
Excellent. A question that I always liked, and we're getting close on time, and I certainly want to be as respectful as I can of your time, Josh. I don't want to keep you all day, but I always like to ask everyone I interview, do you have any interesting, any fun or funny stories from the industry that you could share?
It's not as much a power engineering story, but as a gas fitter, when I first started doing on-call for, service for gas customers in a previous company, one of the first times when I was on call, I got a call on a Friday night from a customer who was all worked up. He could smell gas.
Oh, okay.
Restaurant, and they had just recently been converted over to natural gas, and he was all worked up on the phone. He was sure they were going to blow up and it was the end of the world. He needed me to get there right away. And then he asked how much it was going to cost. I told him, it's overtime, it's this and that. He said, well, I'll blow up before I pay that. So hold on a minute, I'll call you back. So I called my boss on a Friday and I was like, I think I got to go down and check this out for this guy. Just, whatever. He's like, yes, go look at it. So I got down there and I'm checking out the restaurant, and he's still panicking, all freaked out. And I can smell something, but it's not natural gas that I'm smelling. And of course, we've got natural gas detectors and we're looking for it. I'm not finding anything. I can't. And I'm telling them, there's no gas leak here, sir. I'm sorry, I don't know what you're smelling. Finally, I said, where have you smelled it the strongest? And he showed me like a flat top fryer of some kind. And I kind of pulled it out and looked behind it. And there was a plastic spoon that had fallen in behind, and it was melting on the backside of the grill. And that's what he smelled. It wasn't gas at all. So he felt a little silly, and he gave me a voucher for his restaurant.
There you go. That all's well that ends well.
Yeah, we didn't charge him a bit for that service call.
That actually raises another interesting question, Josh. And again, talking about how the industry has shifted, and certainly over the last decade and in recent years, there's been a huge shift in awareness and prioritizing safety. Can you just speak a little bit to how in your role, how big safety is?
It's huge. It's everything. And the fact that we have power engineers that are regulated to be on site is absolutely about safety, because the equipment we're looking after has the potential to do some serious damage if things go wrong and if nobody's watching. So everything that we do is designed for fail safe. So if the power goes out, everything fails and shuts down in a safe state. So it's as safe as possible. And everything is designed with lots of safeties built into them. So, again, with my world, where I work with compressors, everything has, high pressure limits and high temperature limits. Things will shut themselves down automatically. But again, if something fails, we've got emergency stop buttons all over the place within reach. So if something's wrong, we can just boom, tap a button and it'll automatically shut everything down safely. But again, power engineering is specifically a trade for safety. That is why we are there, because the equipment that we monitor and the equipment that we work on and take care of does have the potential for a real disaster if nobody's paying attention and if it's not properly maintained.
Excellent. I got another question coming in via the Q&A function, and it's a two-part. First part is, how closely do power engineers work with Boilermakers? And the second part is, do power engineers often work in confined spaces?
That goes back again, yes, yes. But it goes back to which area of the trade you work in, because it's such a vast trade. And yes, if you're somebody that works with boilers, yes, you're going to work a lot more closely with boiler makers. Personally, I don't, with what I do, again, it's compressed natural gas. I'm working with gas compressors, so I don't work with boilers. And what I do, I have worked with boilers in the past, obviously. It's not my job now. And what we do at Heritage Gas, we don't work in confined spaces. We don't have a need for it. But yes, there are certainly applications with large boilers, large pressure vessels, and larger equipment where you would be required at times to enter a confined space.
Okay, interesting. And is that something you find that most new power engineers are comfortable with?
I think a big you're typically younger and you're gung ho and you're not worried about it. I know was my take on it when I was younger on stuff like that, but it's certainly become more to the forefront. Certainly there's been a lot more training put on around confined spaces. There's a lot more requirements in place. And I think, honestly, the training does a good job of scaring people into understanding that what the potential risks are. You could die, and it's that people understand that, because when you're young, you don't maybe understand the risks entirely, or you're new to it. You don't fully understand what the risks are. You're gung ho to impress somebody, and you want to do it. You don't really know quite what you're getting into. So it's good that the training has become what it is.
Excellent. I'll put one more call out to folks who are watching if they have any other questions to enter via the Q&A. But in the meantime, Josh, and I know we talked about young people entering your trade a little bit more broadly. If you had to give one piece of advice to a young person who is interested in perhaps exploring a career, not necessarily just in the power engineering trade, but in the trades in general, what would that one piece of advice be?
See if you can find somebody who does it, and pick their brain, and maybe see if you can go for a day trip or a ride along, or go see what it actually looks like out there. Because I know sometimes you get a picture in your head of what you think something is, and you think this is what your daily job will be, and then you actually go do it and you're like, whoa, that wasn't what I wanted at all. So
Yeah.
I think if it's an option, definitely try and check it out in person before you really commit to it.
Yeah. And in your experience, are many people within the industry, are they open to doing that for someone?
Yeah, for the most part, you do see it a lot now. There's like take your kid to work day at different places and stuff to see. But yeah, it's definitely coming around. And even, I mean, there's a lot more programs again, like what you guys are doing, and through high schools and whatnot to introduce people to the trades at a younger age and kind of get them familiar with what's available.
Excellent. I do have another question coming in on the Q&A, and this is something that we've talked about in a number of our sessions so far, as the idea of kind of mobility within the trades and within the construction industry. In the power engineering trade, is there a lot of travel involved?
No, typically, and that's one of the things that kind of sets the power engineering trade apart from some of the others. Is it's not as much of a construction trade as it is kind of a trade in place.
Right.
It's good if you can be there for the construction process, but we're typically the guys that are showing up after it's built, and we're the guys that are going to take care of it now. And then, of course, you'll be involved with expansions and modifications and stuff like that along the way. But you're typically looking after one plant, one facility, one location, and that's where you go for work. And you typically have, unlike some of the other trades, you'll have a set schedule. And that's one thing I should mention with power engineering. Quite often it's shift work, so you could be working 12-hour days, nights, or depending on the location you're at. But you've typically got a very solid, very consistent schedule, which a lot of people like.
Yeah. And you wouldn't, you're not necessarily as impacted by seasonality as some other trades occupations might be?
Again, that depends on which area of the trade you're in. Yes, there are certain places, like we'll say like, farms, if you're in like blueberries or production of some kind, there's, certain times a year that only fire up and run for 4 months of the year. But now if you're at a power producing facility, you're going to be working year round. If you're in a hospital boiler room, you're going to be working year round. So there's a lot of secure year round jobs in it to be had.
Excellent. And maybe what we'll do then, Josh, is that we'll leave it on that note. And I do want to thank you once again for making the time for us this afternoon. I want to thank Heritage Gas as well for supporting you and making the time for us this afternoon. It's a lot of really great stuff. I like to say, I can always see the passion come out in people when they start to talk about their trade and their occupation. And that certainly was no different with yourself. So thank you once again for making the time for us this afternoon.
Oh, you're very welcome. And if any questions come in after the fact, you know how to get a hold of me. Feel free to send them my way.
That's excellent. And I'll echo that as well. If we do, once we end here, if there are any questions and anyone didn't get a chance to ask, or tomorrow morning you wake up and something comes to mind, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. My email, my phone number is all available through our website, which is www.buildingfutures.ca. And I can certainly connect with Josh on your behalf and follow up with you. And I will add as well, please promote these sessions and these videos for anyone who wanted to see and didn't get a chance. Again, the recordings can be seen at our website, www.buildingfutures.ca, or the Department of Education's YouTube channel. And one last plug, please keep an eye out for information regarding next week's session. We're going to be speaking to Mike Clements from Ocean Contractor about his job as a construction estimator, but also learning a little bit more about the road building side of the industry in general. So again, thank you, Josh. Thank you, everyone who tuned in. I really enjoyed myself. Stay safe, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye now.